So it is a beautiful day. And I don't want to ruin it. I know, it's not a happy message today, but let's change it up, all right? Because it's a nice day. I thought it was going to be a cold, gray day, ugly November. But instead, we're in the middle of a beautiful September day. So let's not talk about sin, which is what I was going to talk about. Let's talk about archery. All right, see, that's what I like to hear, a little archery action going on. Yes. So we're going to talk about missing the mark, right? And there's a term for missing the mark in ancient Greek archery. You know what it was? Sin. Yeah. So when the ancient Greeks, when they were, have their archery contests, you hit the bullseye, great. I don't know what they said to that, but if you missed the bullseye, they all yelled, sin! And so that's what missing the mark really is, and that's what sin really is. All right, I lied. We're going to talk about sin. That's what sin is missing the mark, right? Now you can miss the mark by a little bit, or you can miss the mark by a lot, right? And so when we think of sin, we think of murder, right? We think of adultery. We think of the big ones, and you know what? That is missing the mark by quite a bit. I don't want to make that wrong in any way. But those are the easy ones. Anybody? I better not ask. I was going to ask anybody murder or adultery. I changed, but I don't want you to confess that right now. So, but you can be closer to the mark, right? I mean, think about an archery target, right? It's a target, right? There's a bullseye in the middle, and then there's a ring, and then another ring, and another ring. And so we like to say we don't sin if we're just hitting the target. But that's not the goal, right? Because you can hit the target and be way over here on the right and miss the mark completely. But we're not so upset if we miss the mark a little bit. Maybe we're in the second or third ring, right? Like the second ring, so the bullseye and ring 1, 2, 3. We'll say that 3 is the big sins, right? That's the murders and the adultery and the stealing and all that kind of stuff. And so the second ring, we struggle more with that, right? That would be like your gossiping. Or maybe you're lying, or you're cheating on your tax, or whatever it is. That's kind of, you know that's sinful, right? Right? Nobody has to tell you gossip is sinful. We've talked about that enough. So there's no big surprise there. And so we don't want to be in that ring either, right? The problem really is we're very comfortable being in the ring right next to that, right? So the bullseye is perfect. That's the path we want to be on, is the bullseye. We are unfortunately very comfortable sitting in just a little bit off. I'm teaching a class at Great River Christian School, and I asked the students, I said, students, what grade do you want to get in this class? Right? We just had this test, and some of them did good, and some of them didn't do too good. And so I said, write me a little essay, and tell me what grade you want to get. And honestly, I thought that the students would all say, I want an A. They didn't. A couple of them did. A couple said, I want an A. But a bunch of them said, yeah, a C, be okay. And so some of them said, as long as I pass, I don't really care. Just pass me, please. Right? And that surprised me. But I think it's the same way that we treat our walk with God. As long as we're passing, I'm going to take a C would be okay, right? But that's not what Proverbs is talking and calling us to do. Proverbs is calling us to walk in perfection, to walk the way that God has designed. Over the past couple of weeks, we've seen how to do that with speech, and we've seen how to do that with people we know. And today we're going to talk about some ways, some attitudes, some things that we do that we don't even know are sinful. So remember, sin doesn't necessarily mean capital E, big time evil, go to hell for all eternity stuff. Sin means missing the mark. It means not hitting the bullseye that God would like us to have in our lives. So, I can tell you right now that I have missed the mark in all 4 of the ways that we're going to talk about. And I would bet that you have all missed the mark in all 4 ways that we're going to talk about today. And that's not good. It's not good that I missed the mark. And I'm not excusing us. At least we're all in it together, right? That's not the point. The point is we can do better as God, as the Holy Spirit works in us, to root out the sin that is in our lives, to help us walk with God more perfectly. So as I go through Proverbs and I read it, things pop out to me. You guys, I didn't ask you to do it. You know, the last 2 months I asked you to read Proverbs a chapter a day. I didn't ask you to do it. Anybody doing it anyway? Okay. Me too, but I have a ulterior motive. I have to talk about it. So anyway, these 4 things popped out to me as themes of Proverbs, things that we see over and over and over, and we need to adjust our lives to them, or in this case, away from them, if we want to walk perfectly on the path that God has set out. The first one I want to talk about today is gluttony. Yeah. You know, I think that may be why it popped out to me. I tend to be a glutton, right? Now, when we talk about gluttony, we're talking about always consuming, right? Always needing more. In verse 20 of the passage Mike just read, it says, "Be not among wine bibbers." Bibbers or bibbers? Nothing. Either one. I shouldn't have mentioned it. "Be not among wine bibbers or among gluttonous eaters of meat. For the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty, and drowsiness will clothe a man with rags." Right? So, again, this is not the only verse that it says this in, but we need to be aware of gluttony, of consuming for the sake of consuming. And when we talk about gluttony, we're talking about food, right? I mean, really, when it was Laura's birthday this week, and Katie made some wonderful cupcakes. It's a shame Laura didn't get it. Okay, that's not quite true. But I certainly ate more than my share of those cupcakes, right? I was a glutton with those cupcakes. I suffer from this attitude of gluttony. I remember when I was a kid, we used to go out sometimes for pizza, right? We'd go to a place called the Big Banjo, right? And the Big Banjo, they had this huge, it's a beautiful thing. You know, sometimes I dream about it salivating. It's just this beautiful big pizza. And we had this rule in my family. I was allowed to eat 3 pieces of pizza, and then I had to stop while my sister ate 1. And then when she ate another piece, then I could have 3 more. And then when she ate another piece, and you see how it goes, right? And I was just furious with my sister because I wanted more pizza, and I wanted it now. I was gluttonous with eating that pizza. And of course, my sister, she knew the rule. It's amazing how slowly she ate when we went out for pizza. But the point is, I wanted more. I didn't need more. Was I hungry after the first 3 pieces? No, I just wanted more pizza. I just had to have more and more and more. And I still struggle with gluttony with food sometimes, just the needing of more. But you know, the thing about Proverbs, and I know none of you suffer with it, but the thing about Proverbs is it's not meant to be taken perfectly literally. Right? It's principles. And so the principle of gluttony isn't just about food. It's about anything that you just want more. You just can't get enough. You just can't, you constantly have to have more stuff. And you've seen the show like Hoarders on TV, right? Where somebody just has to have more and can't give anything away. And it's just, it becomes, I don't want to call it a disease, but it becomes a terrible thing, and yet all of us struggle with this idea sometimes of I just want more. I just want more money in my 401k, or I just want some people we know are, what do you call it when you can everything and you want to have 27 years worth of stuff in your closet? You know, they do that, right? They just want more. They never feel satisfied. They think they need more to be satisfied. Is there something in your life that you can't be satisfied with unless you have more? Think carefully before you answer. Because I think most of us want more of something. When there's a problem, when there's a dissatisfaction in our life, what is it? This part of the passage that Mike read, it was about drunkenness. I assume you caught that, about how you feel like you're sleeping on the top of a ship's mast, right? It's a very picturesque thing. And what does the drunkard, who, by the way, is a glutton about alcohol, what does the drunkard think at the end of that passage? What does he want? He knows he's sick. He knows he's, not feeling well. He's got these bruises and these cuts. And what is it? What's the answer? More. When shall I awake? I will seek another drink. I just gotta have more. I challenge each one of you to look at your lives and say, is there something in my life, whether it's money or fame or friends or whatever it is there something that you feel like you just can't let go? You can't be satisfied unless you have more. You know how you combat that? You know how you combat gluttony? You combat it with generosity. You learn to give stuff away. And this is a generous church. You are a generous group of people, and I appreciate that. But think about it. If there's something that you just feel you can't give away, ask God to show you where you can be a blessing to someone else. Don't just be always consuming. Be a giver. God has blessed us, just like I said to the kids, God has blessed us with our stuff so that we can give it away, so we can bless others with it. So that's the first thing we see throughout Proverbs, is this idea of gluttony. The second thing we see, laziness. Yeah. The Proverbs speaks very clearly about laziness. In 21b, what I just read, it kind of at the very end, it said, for the drunkard and the glutton, drowsiness will clothe a man with rags, right? And so throughout Proverbs, we see it addressing laziness. And I struggle with laziness, right? And I know that many of you struggle with laziness as well, especially those of you who are retired, right? Because it's, some people say, oh, when I retired, I was busier than ever. And maybe that's true. Others, maybe not so much. I don't know. I'm not judging anybody. You've got to ask God, and you've got to say, am I behaving lazily? And in Proverbs, it's mostly laziness about work and about earning and that sort of thing. But again, we're not going to be too literal about it, right? We can also be lazy with our spirituality. Laziness brings in material poverty in our work life, but it also brings in spiritual poverty in our spiritual life. Are we doing the things that we ought to do in order to maintain and to grow our spiritual life, or are we lazy about it? There's a passage in chapter 26. It says there's a man, it says the sluggard dips his hand in the bowl, but is too tired to bring it to his mouth. All right, what this is, it's showing a picture of a man starving to death with a big pot of food in front of him, and he just can't get it to his mouth. That's American Christianity today. American Christianity today is a place where people are surrounded. There's so many Bibles. You can go on Amazon and buy Bibles. Go anywhere you want and get Bibles. How many Bibles do we have in our house? And yet we're too tired. We're too lazy. We're too, I don't even know what the word would be, but we don't even bring it to our mouths. We refuse to have the Bible as a part of our lives. Our prayer time is a part of our lives. Our small groups is a part of our lives. Our service is a part of our lives. We're just too lazy. Is that too harsh for a beautiful September day in November? That's the call, though, right? We are starving to death spiritually, surrounded by food that God has provided for us. The opposite of laziness, the way to combat laziness is, of course, diligence, right? Sometimes not being lazy, being diligent takes effort and it takes willpower. We can't be too tired. We have to commit ourselves to doing the things that God is calling us to do, to walk in His way, to walk on His path for His glory and for our good. That's what Proverbs is calling us to do, to walk on the path. Verse 26 says, "My son, give me your heart and let your eyes observe my ways." That's what God is calling us to do. To see His ways, and by the way, walk on them as well. All right. So the first point was gluttony throughout Proverbs. The second point is laziness that we see throughout Proverbs. The third point I want to talk about is envy. Our culture, our society is based on creating dissatisfaction. Right? We are always envious of what others have or what others are doing. You watch a commercial, right? Watch an hour of a football game. How many commercials are on there trying to say what you need is a newer, better car, or what you need is a newer, better house, or what you need is newer, better clothing, or what you need is, I don't know, whatever the commercial is for. It's always about creating dissatisfaction. In Proverbs 14, we read, A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. When we are always looking at others and what they have and envying that and desiring that, it's rottenness to our bones. It creates anxiety and it creates depression. Proverbs says, be satisfied. How do we combat? How do we combat envy? With gratitude. If we spend our time thinking about what God has blessed us with and what he's doing and what a great God he is and faithful for what he's doing in our lives, then envy becomes maybe not a problem, but certainly less of a problem. Thanksgiving is what helps us to walk with God because we remember that he's all good and providing for our needs, whatever they may be. So let's not be envious. And again, Proverbs has many verses that show this over and over. But I confess, I'm the one who's teaching this today. Maybe it's only me. Maybe I'm the only one who struggles with gluttony and envy and laziness. Maybe you guys are going, what? Get out of here, Jim. But I don't think so. I think these are things that we all struggle with sometimes in our lives. The fourth one, the final point that I see popping out at me in my reading of Proverbs is ignorance. Proverbs warns over and over and over against ignorance in our lives. Now, to be quite honest, sometimes we don't even know what we don't know, right? We don't even know what the target is that we're shooting for. I was thinking this week, I was remembering a time when I was, again, just a kid. I was thinking about me being a kid a lot. I wonder why that is. I'll have to think about that. Anyway, I was a kid. I was 7 or 8 years old, something like that. We went to my grandfather's little farm thing, and I got to shoot the BB gun. I was so thrilled. I never got to shoot the BB gun before, so we went out behind the barn, and he put a coffee can on the post, right? And we're going to shoot the BB gun, me and my brother. And my brother picks up that BB gun, and ting, 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 right? He hits that can 4, 5, 6 times in a row, and I want to shoot the BB gun. So it's my turn to shoot the BB gun. And so my grandfather shows me, here's how you sight it. You know, you see the coffee can, and I couldn't see the coffee can at all. I mean, it's over there somewhere, right? I didn't know the target. I didn't know where it was. Yeah, there's a problem. I won't go into it. But the point I'm trying to make is I couldn't see the target, right? And though I couldn't hit the target if I didn't know what it was and where it was. And that's, unfortunately, some of us, as we walk through life, we don't even know what we're shooting for. We don't even know where the bullseye is because we are ignorant. Sometimes willfully ignorant, and that's really the problem. Sometimes we're deceived, right? I read a great article talking about the gospel according to Disney. Have you ever heard of that? Have you ever heard? It was really interesting. The gospel according to Disney is follow your heart. Right? Whatever your heart wants to do, do that. Because that will lead you to happiness. That's not the gospel according to God. Right? The gospel according to God says, quote, the heart is desperately wicked. Who can understand it? Right? We don't follow our heart. That's the point of it. We follow God. We follow his will. We follow the path that he's put in his word. That's the key to happiness. That's the key to joy and to purpose in our lives. Not following our hearts. Because we can't trust our hearts. We have to follow God. In fact, it says in chapter 14, it says, there is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. There are things that people think are the right thing to do. They seem good, right? They seem like a wonderful choice. And yet, in the end, it leads to death because of ignorance. And we, as an American church, again, and I don't mean just us in this room, I mean people all over the country, are ignorant because we choose not to know what God's saying. We choose to not read the Bible. We choose to not apply the Bible. In fact, we don't even want to know what the Bible says. Because if we do, we have to decide, will I change my life or will I follow my heart? That's the problem we have. We are called, in verse 23, it says, buy truth and do not sell it. Buy wisdom, instruction, and understanding. When you buy something, it means give something up for it, right? Whether it's money or whether it's work or whatever it is, we're buying wisdom, we're buying instruction. And that's what it takes to escape from ignorance. It takes giving something up. And maybe that giving something up is, watching reruns of Law and Order for 3 hours a night. I love Law and Order. But if that's where I'm going, then I have to say I'm going to be ignorant with what God says. If I'm not willing, there's nothing wrong with Law and Order, right? It's okay. You guys okay if I watch Law and Order? You don't seem too sure of that. But the problem is if I'm always watching Law and Order, or if I'm always watching football, or if I'm always doing something other than seeking the truth that God has for me, then guess what? I'm back to the guy who puts his hand in the dish and is too weak, too tired, too lazy to even bring it to my mouth. That's not the guy I want to be. I want to be the guy who seeks the Lord with all my heart and follows and applies what he says. Is that who you want to be? You got to ask yourself, right? It's like the kids in my class, right? Some of them, yes, I want to get an A. Others of them, not just pass. What about you? Do you want to follow God with all your heart? Do you want to hit the bullseye? Or are you comfortable just, I'll just work on the gossip thing. I'm not going to worry about the gluttony, the envy, the laziness, or the ignorance. Because that's closer. But that's not what we're called to be. Again, this isn't about being evil. This isn't about, God's anger and wrath and punishment. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about missing God's best, missing the bullseye that God has for us. And that, my friends, on a beautiful September day